Lavinia, if you are ready, we are all set.
Sounds good. Maya isn't on yet. Should we just start the meeting?
Hey, this is Nichelle. I just talked to Maya. She'll be on in just a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, we can get started then. I call this meeting Safety and Student Wellness Ad Hoc Committee, February 9th, 2023 to order. We can move on to our agenda item to approve the minutes. I move to approve the minutes from the meeting of the Safety and Student Wellness Ad Hoc Committee dated March 17th, 2022 as written. Can somebody second?
Second.
Okay, I don't know if that was Megan or Ruben.
That was Ruben.
Okay. And then I move to approve the minutes from the Safety and Student Wellness Ad Hoc Committee dated January 12th, 2023 as written.
Lavinia, let's take a vote on the minutes.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. My bad. Okay, and then all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And then you already have a motion on the table for the 1/12/23 minutes. Looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay.
Awesome, thank
We
you.
can move on. Thank you for reminding me, Barb.
Mhm.
I think we can move on to our next item, which is just finishing up the final recommendations that we're going to be sending to the Board of Education. Barb, if you want to screen share. We have, I believe it is 5 categories to go through tonight. However, we did we came to a conclusion sort of on our general staffing. So I think we can start with that. And I believe Maya has joined us. Yes, Ruben.
Yeah, I just wanted to pose a question for anybody who wasn't here last time, so we can kind of explain how we came to our conclusions, and for anybody who's trying to catch up. And then also, if anybody, in looking at those lists, they're much longer, and so it's kind of harder to get to the top 3. And I don't know if anybody else had any ideas about these last 5, doing them differently. I mean, a lot of them can be consolidated into one point, I recognize. So I'm not sure if we want to do the same process as last time. So those are my 2 thoughts.
Maya and Lavinia is Maya, okay.
I'm here, Barb. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so I just want to maybe recap a little bit from the last meeting. So if you want to go ahead and do that, Maya, I'm showing the document right now about proposed recommendation language. I can also pull up the document from last time that gives the category and the recommendations. So both documents are available. I just I thought we might go through the action that was taken at the last meeting, review that. And then, yes, tell people what is left and how you want to approach that.
Yeah, Barb, you can keep up this here.
Okay.
And I can just give some background for folks that are joining us that weren't here last week. So basically last week, what we did was we took everyone gave their submissions, their recommendations for each of the topics. And Barb was so gracious to put that together. And then when we came back together last week, Thursday, we went through each category individually. And at that time, we were only able to get to 3 of the categories of the 8 or 9 that were, we kind of grouped them based off of like what recommendations were similar to each other. And what the process in which we did it was, so each individual category, I read off what the actual recommendations were. And then we had a discussion as to like what were the top 3 that folks were kind of focusing on. And then from there, we picked out those 3, and then we made these 3 motions. So for the internal advisory panel, we made the motion to approve that. Nutrition, we approved recommendations 1, 3, and 6. And then for building and facilities, we are recommending item 2, 3, and 4 from that list that Barb had showed previously. And then in general staffing, we kind of came back with somewhat of like a consensus, but we just wanted to make sure how folks felt about that. And then we were going to go over the last categories. And so what Barb, Lavinia, and I did was we went through the categories and crafted some proposed language, just so that it makes it a lot easier for folks. And so I know last time it took us a little time to even get through the 3 or almost through to 3. So we just wanted to make sure that we had some language that was that we had ready for everybody before we came together today. So hopefully that was clear enough for folks to understand. Yeah, okay. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I just have a question. I don't recall the last line necessarily saying to fill, general staffing, proposed action A, last line under 2. Consider expanding the scope of the volunteer and community partnerships positions. To address, both safety and mental health concerns. I don't know if I'm feeling a little uncomfortable saying to fill some of the gaps of the licensed social worker psychologist. I don't think that's what my intention is to fill the gap, but of those particular positions, but to address the safety and mental health concerns that were, brought up by this committee.
Barb, can you go to the previous sheet, please? Thank you. And if you can go to the category with the general staffing. Okay. And so these were the recommendations for the general staffing here. And so I know in the last meeting, you all gave us, the co-chairs, the permission to go ahead and craft the language based off of what we were talking about previously. We said that a portion of it we felt would be moved to training category, which we did. And the second highlighted part would go to categories. I think the question was when it's like we need, counselors, nurses, social workers, psychologists, and so forth. And we just need more like wellness staff in the middle schools. I think that's where we decided that the language for that is, getting more folks in and filling those gaps. But if you guys are not comfortable with that language, then, we can definitely change it.
I think that is addressed in B, where we're talking about student to staff ratios for those specific areas. So increase the student to staff ratios in the areas of psychology, social work, nursing, and counseling. That I'm comfortable with.
Mhm. Yeah, and then I think part of the thing was in our last conversation, expanding the scope of volunteers. And so like seeking more of our community partners to kind of fill in those gaps. Like, you know, we have organizations that we work with that might be able to provide resources around that too. So, but I understand where you're getting at, Rebecca.
Because I think using volunteers and having community partners is to address some of the safety and wellness concerns expressed overall. And I see the ratio, the student to staff ratio with regard to psychologists, social workers, nursing, and counseling different. And from, I just don't want there us to think that let me see what I'm trying to say here. We're not assuming those positions by through volunteers and community partnerships. So that's all I have to say.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that the language assumes that we're seeking our partners and volunteers to actually become those different areas of wellness, opposed to saying like we need actual staff who assume those positions. Okay. So no, okay, I understand where you're getting at with that. Any discussion around possibly, it sounds like Rebecca, you would like to remove that language from that and just seek expanding the scope of volunteers and community partners, opposed to having it more specified around
That would be what I'm suggesting, is
Okay.
that it read the scope of the volunteer and community partner partnerships to address safety and mental health issues that to address safety and mental health issues.
Okay. How does other folks feel about that? Yeah, I got a thumbs up from Mari and Jessica. Mike, I saw your hand first. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I agree with Rebecca.
Okay, thank you. Andre?
I was going to say the same thing. I don't think you want to confuse it. The volunteers are replacing the duties of licensed people, but they're doing things to support, other functions.
Okay. Got it. How do you guys feel about the other parts of A, B, and C? Nichelle?
Wait, I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, the only thing I was gonna ask about is that other part in A that says cover the duties of lunch and recess supervision and hallway monitoring, being connected to the role of volunteers. Is that one still keepable? Like the A1?
Suppose that the safety wellness of volunteers onboarding process towards the goal of increasing volunteers in the schools to cover. I mean, I think we can still keep it, unless we want to just say something more general, and take out just 1 and 2 and just say that increasing volunteers in the schools to address and support safety, safety and mental health issues, or something like that. That way it doesn't, again, we can, or say expand the scopes and not necessarily put anything more specific towards it. I guess it would depend on how everyone feels about that. Andre?
I was gonna say, to me, I think it's fine to leave in. That was like a concrete example of things that they might do that would free up, especially teachers, kind of in the whole context of others that are pulled in to do those duties outside of their other tasks. But if it's more general, and the next advisory group is one that decides on what are those tasks and duties for volunteers, I'd be fine with, but I would also be fine leaving it in.
Okay. Mia?
Yeah, so we could leave that in and then add like a little portion after that saying, and also to address other needs of safety and mental health, like wellness. And that's something that I would see that like we could do as well, so that we're addressing like the first bullet point and then like being more general to include other things too. But yeah.
Thank you, Mia. Dr. Hicks?
So along with what Maya Mia as well as Andre stated, you could just also just put, the word examples of some duties, because just the way it is, it seems it's limiting if it's just there. So if you say example of some duties could be.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions about this before I read them? Okay. Okay. So Barb, I would have to like redo the proposed action language to say, that I move that we utilize the proposed action as
Well, you can just change the action as you want. These are just proposals. They are not. Yeah, they can be changed at any point. So go ahead and change the language as you see fit. If I may suggest, it's sounding to me like item B under general staffing. Okay, let's just take up item A. Yes. So reword it the way that you want to. I think the first part of it is fine, but however you want to end it up, and you've had 3 suggestions so far. So Dr. Hicks is,
the example.
Yeah, that's correct. It could limit it, so you may want to stay more general then.
Okay. 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 I move to advance. Well, not really advance. I move to advance.
Well, you can say it exactly how it is in there, Maya. That's
Okay, that is proposed. Yeah.
Until you get to items 1 and 2.
Okay. I move to propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education that the district investigate improvements on volunteer onboarding process towards the goal of increasing volunteers in the schools to address safety and mental health needs and supports. For example, cover the duties of lunch and recess supervision and hallway monitoring. Does that sound good about what everyone is kind of saying? Okay, I need a second then.
I second.
Oh.
Sorry.
I saw Dr. Hicks' hand, but I just saw the thumbs up, but I wasn't sure if she wanted to say.
Yeah, I second.
Okay. And Rebecca, it sounded like you wanted to say something. Okay. So then all in favor of this motion? Or do we want to open it up for discussion again? Or everyone's good? Everyone's good. Okay, so all those in favor of this motion, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, so it looks like all the voting members voted in favor of this motion. Okay. The second one is the proposal for, we can do this one separate. And then also, I don't think, Barb, we don't have to do for number C, that's a consensus. So we wouldn't have to make a motion for that one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the second part of general staffing, I move to propose that the safety and student wellness ad hoc committee recommend to the Board of Education continued support of the district's efforts to move towards the national goals of increasing the student to staff ratio in the areas of psychology, social work, nursing, and counseling. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you, Andre. Any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, it was unanimous. Barb.
Okay, do you just want to ask for nays, anyway, Maya, just to be sure?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any opposed to this motion? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on. So we wanted to kind of do the out of box ideas. And I don't know, Lavinia, do you want to do this one?
Yeah, so it was mentioned at the last meeting that the out of box ideas didn't really, fit into a certain category that's out of box. And that the recommendations made were kind of, general things that people wanted to see, but possibly not something that like we specifically recommend to the Board of Education. So we were just wondering if any of the committee members or like if you guys would be okay with just kind of mentioning that we want to continue supporting this, but not make it like a specific recommendation to the Board of Education. And Maya, do you want to add if there's anything else to add?
No, that was pretty much our conversation. I see Rebecca unmuted herself.
As I went through all of the other recommendations, many of these more vague bullets are assumed in more specific areas like behavior or training or staff or student mental health. So these feel so vague and general for me. So it just looks like a filler without really like who's going to assume this in terms of implementation. So I short of this transportation issue with regard to athletic events, that feels like a micromanagement element, and then the other ones are so broad that I feel that they're assumed in the other categories. So I personally would say to get rid of those.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Does anybody else have any comments? Yeah, Ruben.
I mean, a lot of them are, I think, vague enough that they encompass the suggestions from other categories. And so if anything, you know, that can be an addendum to our recommendation. But it's pretty obvious when it says increase mental health support in the out of the box category. When you increase psychologists in your school, that happens at the same time. So yeah, I'm fine with separating that category out, but then acknowledging that the solid goals that we give them lead towards these kind of bigger, more vague goals.
Okay, thank you, Ruben. Gordon.
As far as the communication part goes, I know that during the earlier meetings for this committee, both staff and students mentioned a lot about how they want a more clear communication in terms of like how the email will be put together during a crisis event, how, you know, staff can communicate amongst one another. So I think it would be beneficial to include more specifically, like, how do we want transparent communication? So like, I think maybe we should like go back to what we said previously in the meetings and like put it into these recommendations if we can.
So Gordon, those things are addressed in, specifically are addressed in behavior, the category of behavior. They're also addressed in student mental health. And that's why I was saying, you know, that they're so vague that they're assumed more specifically in the other categories. So around staff mental health, around student mental health, around behavior, the communication and transparency are more thoroughly articulated as to what the goal would be.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So that's under behavior and what else?
Student
in
mental
the
health.
remaining categories, if I broke all of these recommendations into 3 categories and just about every category, staff mental health, training, student mental health, and behavior all have a recommendation with regard to communication to staff, student, and parents.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I see it. Yeah, then we're all good then. I would think for the communication part.
Yep, thank you, Rebecca, for that. Andre.
Yeah, I'd be fine with not having it in. I have seen frequently in this initial section as a general kind of vision statement, where that's included, and then reference that specific items and recommendations follow that. So, you know, I have seen that where this is a more broad thing that captures, you know, the support of this group within the following recommendations that come out. And I would be fine with either direction of that. I do think they're more specifically stated later on. But kind of like going back to my old days of writing paper, you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them it, right? So I would be fine with some generalized statement as well, if that's the direction we wanted to go.
Okay, thank you, Andre. Yeah, Maya, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, hence why we just mentioned that we can go on record and saying that we support the following and just have it just say that. But I'm also in favor of going with the proposed language and just saying that we go on the record saying we support these things and then be done, or we can definitely just propose to get rid of them and because they'll be addressed later. So
Yeah, so there's kind of two ideas out there right now. One, we go with, like Maya said, the proposed language and kind of just show our general support for it, or we get rid of it completely. And I'm wondering, Rebecca, I know you said that you like wanted to get rid of it completely. I'm wondering if you are okay with if we kind of like go with the proposed language and show our general support, or if there's any other comments as well.
I do have a suggestion, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely, Barb.
If you want to move to the other categories and move through those first, I think you will see that many of these items are addressed. And then come back to it if you want to. There's no harm in not doing anything with it, really. But if you feel differently, you can decide at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Barb. But yeah, if the committee wants to decide whether we kind of, if you guys are more comfortable with moving on to the other topics to make sure that we aren't missing anything in the out-of-box ideas by just showing our general support, we can do that as well. Or we can just kind of get it over with and just show our support with this. But yeah. Ruben, I saw your hand up first.
I don't know if this is necessary, but I move that we move on and then come back to this at the end.
Okay. That's good. Mike?
I second.
Okay. So I guess we can move on to staff
Just take
mental
the
health.
vote, Lavinia.
Oh, okay.
We made a motion, so you gotta take. a
Oh,
vote.
okay. Okay, so then all those in favor say aye, correct?
Aye.
And if you could ask for nays, just so there's an audio about it, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
And those not in favor? Any nays? Okay, motion passes. Now we can move on to our staff mental health topic. Maya, is it staff? Is it staff? Maya, do you want to?
Yep. Okay, so I know that everyone has mostly read through the proposed action, so I won't read all the parts, but I'll just open it up for discussion for this one about how we're feeling about where we want to go, if we want to recommend all of these, or do we want to recommend which numbers? So hopefully everyone has like their top 2 or 3 that we ask folks to kind of like pull out. And so I open up the floor for everyone to discuss. Jessica?
I just have a little confusion as to how student teachers got in there. Individual staff choose to take student teachers or not. And I don't know how that fits in with the district, like doing that. It just feels a little weird to me. And student teachers are actually work for staff. So, I mean, it can relieve some responsibilities, but it isn't a total fix either. And again, I don't think it's really up to us to recommend. I mean, we can't tell staff to take student teachers. So that just feels a little awkward in there. That's all.
Thank you, Jessica.
I'm sorry, Jessica, what item is that?
Yeah, 4.
Okay, thank you.
Ruben?
Yeah, I guess I've read through them and I'm scanning through them again. They're really uneven suggestions, right? Some of them are really long, some of them are just kind of shorter, concise ones. So it would be helpful for me to hear from people who are working in the schools what you're actually pulling out from some of those longer narrative kind of things. Because one of them I saw is cell phone policy, right? We already addressed that in another one. So is that the main thing of that, or is there? I just want to hear from school people.
Yeah, thank you. So it sounds like Ruben is just looking for some clarity from folks. Mari, do you want to go ahead as people digest Ruben's question?
I was just gonna say, I like item number 2.
Mm.
Seems fairly specific, and that's all I wanted to throw out there.
Thank you. Is there anyone that wants to speak to Ruben's question? Dr. Hicks, I saw you unmute, and then I saw Jessica's hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, can I get some more background information or what is meant by tailored staff mental health services and time to use them?
So does the person that if they would like to discuss that recommendation that they proposed? I'm not exactly sure who at this point proposed that one.
I could speak on that a little bit. I didn't propose it, but I can say in terms of tailored mental health, staff mental health services and the time to use them. One of the barriers we found last year, especially with the mental health days, when they were given out, was not all staff were able to access them in all buildings. And I think because of calendars, it wasn't anything nefarious. It wasn't like there was anyone was trying to pull one over, but it also was like there was also a stressor because there wasn't enough staff. That I heard a lot from staffers who are like, I can't take a mental health day because if I do, then I'm leaving my team in the lurch. I'm leaving my kids in the lurch. So like, I think just to be able to, so the way I read that piece was, if we're going to offer mental health services access, whether we're talking about counseling, whether we're talking about mental health days in the future, even mental health, not even full days, even if it's like, hey, take a mental health, 2 hours here, if there are schools that or administrators who are able to make that work. What does that mean in terms of making sure that things don't fall apart when and they're given the time to access it, and what, I guess, not protections, but what structures can we build in order to enable that? Because that is something I think personally I would see as a strong retention strategy and a strong support strategy, is to be able to have that. It might not look the same in every building because every building requires different things for everyone, but just to be able to even have this conversation, for us to be able to dive into that, because I think it was a really well-intended policy last year that worked for some people and didn't work for others, and just a way that we can kind of come back to it and figure out how we can systematize it.
So with all of you, what you just said, Mike, that doesn't say that to that with that statement in that to me. And so if that's what you're saying, then you should say that, because to me, how that reads is provide, how that reads to me, or how I'm understanding it just from my lens, is that is to tailor staff mental health services for people and give them time to use them. And my brain went to, again, and my brain went to provide staff with mental health services. And then my brain said, well, we have EAP. It wasn't in there at all around that. So if you want to say specifically around if mental health days or whatever are given, provide time for the people to use them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or is that making sense?
That does make sense. I think even just emphasizing like EAP is sometimes like a processing space, but it's not like you know, from my I have not accessed EAP, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard from colleagues in terms of accessing EAP, it is a phone number you can call. You can get some ideas on how you can move forward, but it doesn't create like a system or a structure of support around that and how that looks in the building. And you know, every building is a little different and people are different in terms of what their needs are. So I think that's, I hear what you're saying though, Dr. Hicks, in terms of us being a lot more explicit about calling that piece out in terms of advancing the mental health day discussion and developing a system that is healthy, not just for the staff, but for the scholars and for the community, because we need to make sure that everything's covered if we're going to access it. But I see Jessica's had her hand up for a while, so.
Yeah, I think I wrote that one. What I really meant was like access to things. I mean, for example, East has had ridiculous number of things that have gone very badly at school that staff needed mental health for, and they'll send social workers from the district, but they'll only be available during lunch. And we need our lunch too. That's a mental health thing as well. So then we can't access people to talk to when they're being provided by the district. I'm not talking about EAP in any respect, just like Mike was saying. It's about like, oh, there was a rape in the building and it's going to trigger a lot of staff, but we're not thinking about that at all. And I've had principals actually refuse staff support in that regard. You know, that if things are happening and we do open up, you know, some things for students, that it should be for staff as well, but that's just part of it. But the time when we do have those things that staff can't access them because they either have to stay after school, after contract, which doesn't allow people that have childcare needs and other things like that to access anything. We're just not giving time for the things that we need. And again, mental health services for staff, meaning whatever that means. And yeah, I suppose that could be more specific. I'm not sure how to make that more specific, but it's about allowing people access to the things that are provided, because we're not. And the days off was one thing. One example.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that first, Dr. Hicks, did that answer your question of what that meant? Okay, thank you. So what I'm hearing is that for number 3 specifically, I think we can use, instead of tailored staff mental health, more so just saying increase staff mental health services and the time to use them. And if we want to like go further, I think I took down some notes of advancing mental health days and discussions and the creation of spaces for staff to feel more healthy. And if we wanted to put an extra, like, for example, EAP, that's kind of like what I'm hearing. But yes, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could add, maybe it's a simple fix of saying the time to use them during their working hours or workday, because everyone has different contract, hours depending on their jobs. So, making it broad enough that, I think that gets to Jessica's point that if we can offer mental health services, if there's people in the buildings, can we provide time? Can we provide structures to make that work? Just like we would do our best to make that work for our scholars. Even if it's processing the same trauma or the same experience.
And I would say that would go along too, Mike, for any staff, custodians who are involved in those things. I mean, and they work, they might come in the afternoon shift, so they're on night, so I'm just being expansive.
100%, Dr. Hicks. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree, Dr. Hicks. I would also say maybe services and supports And I don't know that we have to put EAP in there personally, but I'm open to ideas on that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just crafting that number 3. I'm redoing kind of the language with that. Jessica, did you also have your hand to kind of respond to Ruben as well? His question was just hearing from staff who are in the building, just how they feel about some of these recommendations and if they're applicable at all. So
If we're done dealing with 3, yeah, I can speak to one other one.
yeah, I'm just rewording 3 right
Yeah.
now. So I'll come back to 3.
Okay. I feel very strongly about number 7. I mean, it can be crafted a little bit differently, but the idea of staff having a voice in staff wellness, I think, is absolutely critical. And again, it goes along with the time to use them. We have so many committees that are only accessible to people that don't teach in a classroom because they're during the day. Or they're on our duty-free lunch and we need our lunch for our mental health. We can't necessarily all give that up, or they're right after school. And again, with folks in childcare and so forth. And the idea that, not all staff, all types of staff should be able to be a part of those conversations, not just the ones that have the privilege to have the extra time to show up. And that's why I specifically mentioned classroom teachers and special education staff, security, because those are sometimes people that are not on those committees in general. And just again, during the contract day where they don't have to do extra work to attend. And just giving that voice goes a long way to making staff happier and feeling better about their work.
So Jessica, and again, I'm just asking this question around, and maybe I'm going to be naive here, because when you talk about the committees or whatever, don't all schools have a wellness committee in their building?
No, I've never known a wellness committee. We have a climate committee for the first time this year. Mike, do you know that many other schools have them?
I think some school, oh, sorry, Dr. Hicks, you're saying?
Thought that they did because we did.
I think I've been in 2 MMS, I've worked in 2 MMSD schools. One had a wellness committee, the other one was incorporated in SBLT, and like it became a bit contentious because relationships weren't strong. I'll just leave it at that. So like I would say in terms of a wellness committee, it would I've seen it work multiple ways, but I don't think it's as uniform as certain committees across the district. Like every school has an SBLT, but some SBLTs meet more than others, or the structures are different. So I think that I could say the same thing about wellness committees when I've visited with staff, and I think like some buildings are like, the wellness is good or it's baked in, not to kiss butt or anything, but whenever I go to Wright, like it's wellness is part of it, but that's not the same as other schools. So like I think it's kind of a mixed bag.
Okay. So Ruben, does that kind of somewhat answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's some clarification. Okay, thank you. So I hear Jessica mentioning number 7 as well as something that is very important. I'm gonna reread number 3, just from how I kind of crafted it. So staff mental health services and structures of supports with the time to use during the working day, including advancing mental health days, discussions, and the creation of space to be healthier. Okay. Number 7 is the creation of building level school teams to work on staff wellness and include many stakeholders. So right now I hear 1, 3, and 7 are the 3 that I'm hearing so far. Any other ones that stood out to folks? Ruben?
So just clarifying from the conversation that was just had, is 7 more institutionalizing and standardizing those wellness groups as opposed to creating them? Because it sounds like sometimes they exist.
Yes, it sounds like that is the case. So are you proposing to change this instead of creation, just more like institutionalize the building?
Sure, I wasn't aware of them existing, so yeah.
I think similar to the cell phone policy, right? It's just that we need to have standard
Yeah.
definition.
Agreed.
Okay.
And then, sorry to keep talking, maybe I keep hearing talk about prep time. Do we feel like prep time is included in 3 for that wellness time, or do we feel like that's not necessary for a top 3?
I mean, I think they would be somewhat different, but Jessica, you unmuted. Go ahead.
I would just say, if anything, I think 2 could almost roll into 3 with the wording that you had put together. And then I would kind of go for number 8, because I do think the autonomous planning time is really critical for staff these days.
Okay. Okay, so I'm hearing 1, 3, 7, and 8. Any other discussions about these? Or any other recommendations that folks would like?
Can you just, again, what whoever wrote more communication protocols for school emergencies? Is that, I guess I don't understand. I mean, we have.
So I'm not sure exactly who, I mean, I would have to go back to all my emails of who folks like submitted what. But from just the conversation that I know that what Gordon was mentioning earlier, just when they're at school, and some of the discussion from earlier this summer and somewhat this fall about just the protocols on school emergencies and making sure that everyone knows the protocols, making sure that if there was something that happened, then there's more.
So you're really talking about not more, but improved communication regarding school emergencies.
Possibly.
And that communication included staff, students, and families is what I had seen in all of the other communications that.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just I think you explained it clearly, Maya. I think the only thing I could add is sometimes the more is because there's 0, depending on what happens at the school. So any increase would be more in terms of communication protocols, because, you know, I think it hits differently depending on the building and what's going on and what's not, or who's handling it. So I think that's what I'm reading into point 1.
And I would just like to add, when we talk about standardizing the protocol, just so that it's clear what will be communicated, I mean, when things will be communicated. And because again, when we talk about all of the things, we want to keep people in the loop so they don't have these additional anxiety around things, right? And knowing that it's, for some people, it's never going to be enough. So just standardizing the protocols of the communication and how the communication will go, in my opinion, like that.
Okay.
So it would read something like improved communication regarding standardized protocols for school emergencies for staff, students, and families. I'm good with that.
Consistent or something.
I think the standardized kind of address that consistency.
Yeah, I would say. Okay. So you're saying improve and standardize.
No, I'm saying improved communication and standardized protocols for school emergencies. And then I don't care, in parens, staff, students, and family.
Okay.
So we're talking about how are we communicating to all of those groups, and are we following through with a standardized protocol so that we don't have what we heard, which was that some schools can principals or schools can kind of pick and choose an approach that they may use.
Okay. So improved communication and standardizing of protocols for school emergencies for staff, students, and families. Is that what you said? I'm sorry, I was writing.
Mm-hmm.
How are folks feeling about that one? And I think that actually addresses Gordon's question earlier, as well as addressing some of the comments and conversations that we've had earlier last year. Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think also, as long as we also make sure 0.6 is part of it, I think that also helps the other points, right? Is if there's follow through by all stakeholders. I don't want to just put administrators on the hook, because I would say as a behavior responder, sometimes I've failed in this. So like we all need to be held responsible for this, but like if everyone's following the plans, you know, that would improve consistency and communication and all that. So I think that's just as a way to say 6 bolsters 1 and 2, and you know, actually all of them.
Okay.
I would just like to add that, I think I just lost it. I was gonna say something about communication. Okay, I'll take my hand down. If I remember, I'll come back.
I was just going to say the communication one is kind of universal. It kind of isn't really about staff mental health, but I think it's a really good one. It's a really powerful one. And it's kind of maybe that catch-all that we were looking for in the miscellaneous pile in the first place.
Yeah, I was thinking that too after I restated it. Go ahead.
It came back. Oh, it was around not just that the along with that, in that standardized protocol or whatever and communication, that it's more than like just a one-time thing. Because oftentimes we do something and we do it once and then they keep going. So there needs to be like a cycle of coming back to revisit what they are. Because when things go, you're going versus, you know, not being in, you know, looping back around. Just like with even with scholars, we do it all the time. We come back to expectations, we come back to routines, we come back, but having a cycle of revisiting what those protocols and standards are.
Okay. I'll recraft that as Ruben asks the question or makes a comment. Go ahead, Ruben.
Oh, I was just going to ask you to read back what we have. So
okay. Just 1 second.
I think it might be helpful, Maya, to go through each one separately right now.
Make a different motion.
Yeah, and go through the ones that are already good first and then come back to the ones that have been modified.
Okay. Okay.
However you want to do it, or you can go right down the line.
No, I think that that's going to be the easiest for us at this point for this one. So right now, what I am showing is that there was conversations around folks wanting to ensure that 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8 were included. However, we definitely maneuvered around number 3, 1, and 7. To add some different language. So that leaves us with 2, 6, and 8 that we didn't tailor at all. So I can make a motion for those ones, those 3. So that's 8, 6, and 2. And then we can then make individual motions for 1, 3, and 7 if you guys prefer to do that, or I can just make individual motions for all of them. Go ahead, Andre.
I thought on 6 with Michael bringing it up, he had a friendly, amendment to that it's not just administration. So I don't know if, and then that would seem to change the second part of that to me. If the first seems to be talking about administration, then what happens if that doesn't occur? But if there's a change to include others in that, does that change the second part or not? And maybe that's, Michael, more of a question back to you and your thoughts, since that was one that you brought up.
I mean, I think this kind of goes everything's connected, right? So I think it's connected to us having more training, more communication, so that all stakeholders are aware of their responsibilities during some of these safety incidents or situations. So I don't mind saying ensuring all stakeholders. I mean, ultimately the administration does, they're the leader in the building. But that being said, I just want to make sure it's also not avoiding finger pointing or assigning blame, and more about how do we bring everyone together. So that's why I kind of recommended the all stakeholders piece. I think there have been situations where different stakeholders have been responsible for things breaking down, but I think if we can all follow it or have all stakeholders, I think we're good. But I'm also wondering, I'm just going to say very politely, it's 6:20, and I'm wondering if we're getting a little bit in the weeds on this one.
Yeah, I was just going to mind us of the time as well. Thank you, Mike. Jessica?
I would just say maybe we should put educator instead of teacher as well in that one. This is just to be broader.
In which one?
In 6.
Okay.
To change to make it more encompassing than administration, and then to make it more encompassing as teacher.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ensuring all stakeholders follow through with all written policies in the district's behavior plan, and if stakeholders or educators, you said, do not feel supported in these measures. I would just say if stakeholders, because just in case holders do not feel supported in these measures, they should be able to request assistance, and administration should respond in writing with a plan. Does that sound pretty good, using stakeholders instead? Okay. So I'm just going to go through and just make the motions now for 2. Now 6 is changed, and 8. I'm just going to do individual motions just to make it easy. I think that's the easiest part at this point. But we are going with 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8, which means that we are not going with number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 5. Okay. So okay, let me just get my language here because I'm also typing it in another so I can see it. So I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc recommend to the Board of Education. Okay. I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc recommend to the Board of Education to increase communication and standardized protocols for school emergencies for all staff, students, and families. Take a second.
Second.
Okay. Andre, or who was that? Ruben? Ruben seconded it. All those in favor of that item, say aye, or raise your hand. Okay. All those opposed to that language? Okay, seeing none. It is unanimous. Thank you. The next one is number 2. I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc recommend to the Board of Education more communication protocols for staff, or no, sorry. Okay, for more communication protocols for staff on how to access, well, we said that would be with number 3, I'm sorry. Let me just redo this, I apologize. So I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education staff mental health services and structures of supports with the time to use during working days and advancing mental health days, discussions, and the creation of space to be healthier. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Ruben seconded it. All those in favor of this item, raise your hand.
Aye.
Or say aye. Okay. All those opposed to this item? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Okay. And then now moving on to number 6. I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education a recommendation ensuring that all stakeholders follow through with all written policies in the district's behavior plan. And if the stakeholders do not feel supported in those measures or these measures, they should be able to request assistance and the administration should respond in writing with a plan. Can you get a second? Okay, Mike raised his hand to second it. Thank you, Mike. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Okay, Nichelle, are you voting for this one or no?
I'll vote, yeah. Sorry.
That's all right. All those opposed? Okay, seeing as there are none, it passes. Okay. Now going into the last one for this item, I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education the creation. Wait just a second. Okay, institutionalized, yes, institutionalized building level teams to work on staff wellness that includes many stakeholders And then classroom teachers, special education staff, security staff, etc., that meet during the contract day, Monday, and all other times set aside for professional development with structures that ensure staff voice. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Andre, thank you. And then all those in favor of this one, please raise your hand or say aye. Okay, all the voting members. I think Gordon, I think you're a voting member as well. Are you voting with this one? Okay. So that means that I saw all the hands. Any folks opposed to this? Okay, looks like none. Thank you. So that was the last, or no, sorry, we have one more. I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education more autonomous preparatory and planning time for staff. Second for that one.
I'll second.
Andre second, thank you.
Michael, right? Michael.
Well, I saw Andre voice first, but Michael raised his hand at the same time.
It's fine. Give the credit to Andre.
I'll give it to you, Mike.
Okay, we'll do Mike. It's fine. Let's do Mike. Andre got enough check marks under his belt for my seconds. Thank you. All those in favor for this item, raise your hands. Okay. And then all those opposed. Okay, none. Any abstentions of folks? Okay. Then that concludes that one. There was none for the abstains or abstentions. Barb.
Thank you.
Okay, we are done with that item. Now moving on.
I would like to suggest, Maya,
Yes.
that we take up each of these items individually as we go and not wait for discussions on the other items first. I think people are losing track of where we were with them and we have to go back. Is that okay? All right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, so we're in behavior, the category of behavior. Let's take up number 1, create a safer environment for students and staff and include training for students, staff, and parents. Any discussion on this point? Or would folks like to include that one?
Can I ask, I'm looking at the original list of recommendations, the page 1 through 3. And I'm just wondering how did you this proposed actions, how did this get created, these proposed actions? Are they directly from this this document?
Yes.
Okay. So I looked at this document right here that's currently up on the screen, pages 1, 2, and 3. And I consolidated the items and I'm just going to throw this out. So when looking at this document, item 1 and item 6, I believe speak to training around NVCI, the nonviolent crisis intervention training around de-escalation, and then handling actual restraint and other, so the continuum of de-escalating, hopefully at the very beginning, to the other end of the continuum, which would actually be a hold or a restraint. so I kind of saw item 1 and 6 being around training with regard to NVCI, nonviolent crisis intervention. Number two, number 3.1, number 3.2, number 5, and number 9, I felt addressed the behavioral education plan. So it talked about making sure that we were adhering to the behavioral education plan, which has consequences or teaching that needs to take place for bad behavior. So there's consequences, response levels, and reporting of behavior. So again, I felt that number 2 was really looking at adhering to the behavioral plan, which involves consequences or responses to levels of infractions, and then also reporting those infractions. And those I felt were 2, 3.1, 3.2, 5, 9 were all encompassed in that one. And then the third area was about communicating regarding significant events. And I felt that that was item 4 and 8.
Okay, Rebecca, are you then, okay, so that's just based off of how you kind of like group them together in your head?
Right. So there's 3 areas that are substantive for me. The training area, which involved de-escalation, management of actual violent behavior, teacher training, staff training, lunchroom folks, all of those folks getting training in nonviolent crisis intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the second area was the adherence to the behavioral education plan, which has consequences or responses to infractions, and then also reporting requirements so that we're having good data for our schools to say, where are we having problems and how do we intervene, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third area was, as I mentioned, communication regarding significant events.
Okay. Okay, Andre, your hand?
Yeah, so I guess from my part right now, I just want to clarify and kind of follow up on Michael, but like we could be here till next week. At the last meeting, my understanding is we gave, you guys some authority to go back, revise and make the document, the other document, not this one. So from my perspective, we moved on from this document.
Okay.
We're not rehashing this document. It's the new document that's out. Okay. And I thought what was on the table proposed now is to go number or proposal by proposal kind of down right now. Numbers 1, 2, 3, and do those now. Because I think if we're going back to old documents and the language is there, then the language is different than what is here or was consolidated. And we're gonna be 5 more meetings in. We're already, an hour plus into the meeting, and we've done really kind of 1.5. So I think we need to get back to the document based on you guys meeting, consolidating, and pulling some things together. and kind of go down and yay or nay on the ones that are there to move forward. And if there's not discussion on a particular item, then I think we vote and we move on.
I'm good with that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and just make the motion, quick discussion. We'll figure out if we want to say yay or nay to it. And let's move forward. Just as a time check, it is 6:37. Okay, so I propose, well, maybe we should have discussion to see if this is something that we want to, number one, if we want to move forward or not before I make the proposal. Or do you guys just want to go ahead and vote on it? Okay, let's just go ahead and vote on it. I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education work to create a safer environment for students and staff that include training for students, staff, and parents. Can I get a second? Or not? Okay, Mike seconded. Because it's just easier for me to know like who's the voting member, if you can just raise your hand, that'd be great. All those in favor of this item, raise your hand, please. Or your virtual hands. Okay, all voting members. Any opposed? Okay, none opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, Rebecca abstained. Then the rest of us voted in favor. Thank you. So that passes. It is proposed that the Safety Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education work to update and innovate support systems. A second for that one. Okay. No second. So let's move on. Oh, Mike, are you sure? You want to second it for the sake of discussion or changes?
No, actually, I rescind.
Okay. Okay, so that one does not make the cut. Okay. I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend that the Board of Education work to recommend that the Office of School Safety provide an analysis of how many additional security officers would be needed to respond to and mitigate issues that impact students and staff safety in buildings. If they did not, or if they don't think more security officers are needed, it would be good to hear more about the top 3 issues that staff are responding to and what might be needed to reduce these occurrences. A, advise more widely about open security staff positions. B, develop and enforce school bathroom safety protocols. Check for students who try to skip, escort students to class if needed, provide more staffing to check the bathrooms. And C, create procedures for hallway monitoring or staggering passing times. Second, anyone?
I second.
Okay, so Mia seconded, thank you. Any discussion on this item?
Can I just request that whoever wrote this speak to what they know about bathroom passing times and all of that, so we know the reasoning behind it?
Yes, absolutely. Anyone want to take that on, especially probably to students?
Good. Am I allowed to speak on
Go
it?
ahead,
Just 'cause
Mike. Yeah.
I didn't write it, but I will say bathroom issues are something that I'm seeing universally wherever I visit schools. Usually it is because of concerns about drug use, drug sales, vaping, various things. There have been multiple instances of students fighting in the bathrooms as like part of fight clubs, and then it being recorded and then sent along on Snapchat or TikTok. This is not a new issue. This is not like a recent phenomena over the last couple of years. It is something that's been going on for a while, and it's not, you can't put cameras in the bathroom, right? But I think there needs to be having some sort of discussion around what are our policies, because there are a lot of instances where students are reporting feeling unsafe to staff, or staff are not feeling safe about going into certain bathrooms. This might be more of the secondary level, but still that's what's been communicated to me in my experiences in talking to staff and students whenever I have visited high schools and middle schools.
I would just 100% agree with that. And it's 200 times worse than it used to be pre-COVID for some weird reason.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this because you're obviously the experts in it. I just didn't know if we wanted to propose that a plan be made to make bathrooms safer. I mean, I just don't know if these are the ways that you do it, or if there are ways about putting mirrors in corners near bathrooms, or I just don't know what the best way is. So if this is the best way, happy to defer. But if we don't know the best way yet, then I want to recommend the best way.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ruben. Dr. Hicks?
I don't know. I'm just sitting up here thinking about behavior, and since this is the section, and how policing comes into this, and how consequences, and how we're focusing on those things, and we're not thinking about behavior from a proactive sense in the teaching and all of those things, because it doesn't matter what policies or things we put in place, if we're not doing teaching and learning around expectations and way to be and building a culture and climate, all of this is really for naught. So I'm really thinking about, punishment does not necessarily equate to a change in behavior. I think that oftentimes when we think about behavior, or in my experience, when I see people talk about behavior around children, they are not expected to be able to learn and grow, make mistakes, fall, pick back up. And then a flip side of that, when it comes to an adult, they want to begin given all kinds of grace and everything, and want to say, well, I'm a professional. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about things that are going to help build our community, because we know people don't follow laws anyway all the time. I'm just thinking about what this really means, what this is conveying. The BEP is a guide. Every situation is different. And I just want to also mention that our Black and brown kids don't get opportunities for nothing, for a lot of things. So I'm just putting all of that in this space so that we can make sure that we're thinking about all of it, and not just because we're experiencing, we had an incident or this and that and the other, because we're always going to have incidents. It's how are we preparing for that? How are we teaching kids about that? And not just schools, but in our community. So I just want to make sure that we're all a part of this process, and not just thinking about what's going to happen if you do that, because some people it doesn't even matter. Just want to make sure that we're really thinking about the learning and how, and building the culture and climate that everybody wants to be a part of. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Dr. Hicks.
Jessica? Maya, really quick, if I could interrupt. I'm so sorry. I know that Jessica and Michael both had their hands, but I just want to ask if Mia and Joanna had anything to add or say.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Okay. Then go ahead, Jessica. I mean, Ms. Hoskins.
No, you're good. You're fine. I totally hear what Dr. Hicks is saying, but if a kid doesn't feel safe in school, they can't learn. And this is a safety committee. And I do have, I mean, there was no place for me to go to the bathroom last week or earlier this week, because one of them was closed for really awful vandalism and the other one was closed for vaping. And I had to cross floors, and I wasn't the only one. And, you know, and I'm not talking about me, but I have students that don't feel they can go to a bathroom safely. And that is, you know, what we're here. Nothing in this statement is about, you know, like punishment. It's about trying to keep people safe.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Mike?
Yeah, I think Dr. Hicks raised an excellent point. And I think that also goes to like point one, where we're talking about training, right? Like, so as we're going through these spaces, you know, we've been operating under a behavior education plan for 8 years, and I would contend we have parts of the behavior plan down, but we haven't nailed down the education piece. And what does that mean? But I think it also requires us to really, you know, call it out and say, hey, bathrooms are one of those common areas that we know we need to do better around, just as a school community. I agree that, like, just, you know, making new rules or saying, like, you know, if this happens and this happens doesn't change behaviors in of itself. But I think also we need to first part of changing a problem is admitting that you have one. And I think, you know, when I'm hearing from a colleague who is a Black teacher who just left for another district, saying they are concerned about the bathrooms in their school, and when they brought it up, they didn't feel particularly heard. I want to make sure that voice is, because I think it is a real thing, and it's not just one school or two school, nor do I think it's actually like one particular group of students that are doing it. I think it's just like a matter of let's talk about. It's one of those things I think we assume we have etiquette around, and when we don't, or we just need to remind people, or we need to bring more student voice in terms of, okay, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? So we can empower, just like this committee is supposed to do. But I've done a lot more talking than students, so I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Andrea, I saw your hand real quick. I don't know if you want to make a comment or.
Yes, maybe a comment and a question. So to me, this one speaks to two different things, and I think the second parts of it assume what the result of the first is already going to be. So the first part to me seems to talk about recommending an analysis to figure out what is needed, how many staff you need, and then it goes on to assume if the analysis determines that you don't need more, then having information about the top 3 to 5 issues that staff, and I'm assuming that security staff are responding to, and how you might reduce that. And then it seems like the last 3, the A, B, and C, seem to already have come to the conclusion that these are the primary issues. I have no reason to say they're not, but then why are you doing an analysis if you think you already know what that is? And so I guess I like the part of it, of analyzing it and then following the recommendations that come from that. But the last parts of it seem to already have come to the conclusion that the analysis would be there for.
Yeah, thank you.
Suggest eliminating that second part if that is sincerely that we want to do an analysis, or if we feel that there's enough information from wherever that these are the primary issues, then stick with those issues. And then why are you doing an analysis?
Okay. Thank you, Andre, for that recommendation. Jessica?
I think that's an interesting idea. And if that were to go forward, I would say that the analysis would be done with staff and students and others, you know, so that they could have a voice in that if there is going to be an an analysis for that, rather than just being Office of School Safety.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. Ruben, go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with Andre. So, I mean, I'll just throw something in the pot to boil. Maybe can we move part one? I don't know how to say this. Can we move to have an analysis of improving safety in school bathrooms and bring the analysis to action items in the future? Is that the spirit?
I don't know that it'd be limited to bathrooms as it talks about all time and stuff in some of the later pieces. But I do like
Oh,
the
yeah, you're right.
inclusion and the analysis of, you know, of other stakeholders, students, teachers, other staff that are brought into whatever that analysis would be.
So maybe
So
do
what
we
I
want to say?
hear-
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ruben.
I was gonna say, I mean, I just don't want to say, I don't want a recommendation to be create another one of these panels, right? That we are in right now. So maybe it's an analysis of common area safety. I mean, is that the thread there? I don't know. It just seems like it could go on forever analysis.
I guess I didn't bring this forward. To me, it seems like the first part is talking very broadly about assessing for the level of security staffing that's necessary, which to me, that would assume across a variety of different parts of the school building. And, you know, do you have sufficient staffing or not? And then where are those, you would, I think, hope to identify where are those areas or those deficits, and then potentially what, you know, come up with what those plans are. I'm just saying, to me, this seems to want an analysis, but also assume the answer that's already there. And so I think you either say these are the problems and, you know, here's the recommendations to address them, or you say that we want to analyze, you know, the staffing pattern and what is needed.
Okay. So what I hear you all saying, recommend that Office of School Safety with staff and students provide an analysis of improving safety in school bathrooms.
I wouldn't limit it to bathrooms because I don't see
Okay.
that in the first part. It's school, students and staff safety in buildings. I think it's
Okay.
broader from that first sentence of whoever put that forward.
I would love bathrooms to be included, maybe bathrooms in common areas, because I do think the intent of this doesn't seem to be classrooms, but I mean, that maybe it could be too.
Okay. So what I hear, recommend that the Office of Safety, School Safety with staff and students provide an analysis of improving safety in school buildings, including bathrooms and common areas, is what I'm hearing. In
Okay.
addition to create procedures for hallway monitoring and staggering passing times. I don't want that one to get lost. Okay.
Wait, are we keeping in part A when it says advertise more widely the open security staff position?
I mean, we can add that back in, yeah.
Because
I didn't hear anyone talk about that as a salient point.
The only reason why I said is because like if the analysis says that, you know, there needs to be an increase in security staff, then I think there should be funds set in place for promotion of more security staff positions.
Okay. Providing
And I guess I wouldn't include it because it's assuming that you need more before you know. So if you do, you know, I guess open positions, it's broad. They seem to be intermingling like from my perspective, you're doing an assessment and then you're following up with what comes from that assessment. And to the other parts just seem that you already know. And so if you already know, then just go ahead and propose the three below. But if you want to assess it and do assessment of what your needs are, then I don't think you do the next steps of what comes from that until you determine what those needs are.
Whoever wrote this part, are there currently a lot of open security staff positions?
I know there are these. I didn't write this, but I know we haven't
Okay.
held on to people all year. Do you know much,
Oh,
Mike?
It's I don't have a specific number in front of me. I would say just like any other job in the
Okay.
district where we have shortages. I mean,
Okay.
I won't say it's any worse, but it's definitely not different than other positions. But as we're talking safety, we gotta talk about our SSAs.
Okay. So on that note, then I think we should keep this in or maybe somewhere else on under behavior. Because obviously there's like a shortage, and if we want to actually talk about safety, we want to need the people there who know how to implement safety in other ways. So we may not have to include it under this part because Andre made a good point about whole pre-assumption with the analysis, but I do think we should still include this somewhere on this document.
So I think we can say like if the analysis points that way, there's so if the analysis points that additional security staff are needed to respond to mitigate issues, then ensure that we are advertising more widely and open to security staff positions. If the analysis does not believe we need security staff, then it would, then what are the reasons why? That way it kind of like consolidates those two thoughts into one kind of area. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to now read this as an amendment based off of our conversations. I recommend that the Office and School Safety with staff and students provide an analysis of improving safety in school buildings, including bathrooms and common areas with action items. Also create procedures for hallway monitoring or staggering passing times. If the analysis points that we need additional security officers, that would be needed to respond to and mitigate issues that impact students and staff safety in buildings, then advertise more widely the open security staff positions with possible promotions. If the analysis points to we do not think more security officers are needed, it would be good to hear more about the top 3-5 issues that staff are responding to and what might be needed to reduce these occurrences. And I think Mike was the one who seconded. Is that a good amendment, Mike?
I concur.
Okay, so Mike is accepting that amendment. Okay, now let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor for this item, please raise your hands. Okay. It looks like everyone is in, well, Ruben, I didn't see your hand. Did you raise it? Okay, so everyone is in favor. Those opposed to this item? Okay, it looks like none. It's unanimous. Thank you. Whew. Okay. Time check, you guys. We are 7 o'clock. And we still have a few parts that we need to go through. So, okay. So I recommend that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc recommend to the Board of Education to make sure all staff and students are familiar with the behavior education plan and use appropriate response levels for behaviors. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H as an I, J, K, and L proposed in this document. A second for anyone. Okay, it looks like people are reading. Mike, are you seconding for a discussion or?
I'm not seconding for discussion. I'm seconding for moving. I just want to point out for item J under vaping. I believe it's or there's a typo. I believe it's in vague. And while detection systems might be vague, I just want to make sure we fix that to vape, but also second.
Okay.
Moving
Oh, I
forward on
see
the
vague, purchase vague detection system, so vaping. Barb, that's just a typo.
Got it.
Thanks. So Mike is the one who seconded this. Okay, so open it up for discussion. Just raise your hand if you want to discuss anything. Okay, it looks like there is no discussion. All those in, Lavinia.
Wait, really quick. I think it's H. It kind of speaks to, it says provide more training to teacher staff so they are aware of what to do in escalated situations. I'm wondering if that's something that we should keep under behavior or move to training and kind of see what it fits more with training. And I don't know if we can like discuss later once we get to training, if that is today, on whether or not we even need it or if it's been covered already by the other recommendations or proposals.
So I think, Lavinia, I think we can possibly just keep it there. I don't think it hurts anything. I think it's fine. If we want to move it, we can, but I think it should be fine in there because I do think that there is like other points in this that do talk about that more specifically. So it's kind of like that over like arching thing.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, that works.
But yeah, absolutely. If we want to move it, I'm down to that. Ruben?
Yeah, again, asking for guidance from the people who are actually in the schools. I don't know if vaping is our number one safety concern. I also don't know if the zero tolerance bullying policy actually has consequences that I don't know about, and if it was an actual policy that was gotten rid of for a reason. I don't want to recommend it if it's going to have some outcome that I'm not aware of. And so again, willing to defer, but I might either line item those things or in some other way pass that off to somebody who knows more about those two topics.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna like raise my hand in this one. The behavior education plan is a document that is very extensive, very specific. And the recommendations in here are very specific, but also not all encompassing of what the BEP is. I know that the BEP is a space that the board is working on with administration and really intensively reviewing if it is working. We kind of understand that it's not working very well. So with that, I guess my question to the group is, do we want to even include something about the BEP? Because like I mentioned, it's not really working. However, do we want to just be more broad and just not include A through L and just say that we want to make sure that the BEP, people are familiar with the BEP and that we use the appropriate response levels for behaviors. That way it doesn't necessarily limit to these items, but yeah. but I'm just opening it up. Go ahead, Ruben.
I guess that I'm thinking as I'm speaking, but maybe my recommendation, I would put forth that the board recommend that an analysis of BEP public safety concerns outlined in this report are considered and built in. I don't know why the BEP is not fulfilling all of its goals. So maybe this document is helpful, maybe it's not. I don't know. I think it'd be odd to name something that might not exist in a couple of weeks, but
oh, it's gonna be longer than a couple weeks. Yeah. But I understand what you're getting at. So just have an analysis of the behaviors.
Well, so it seems like this whole point, now that you clarified, thank you, is pulling from the BEP, right? So if what's happening right now is the BEP is being analyzed. I guess my suggestion is for the board recommending that the BEP analysis is guided by the public safety goals and mission. I don't know.
Okay. Go ahead, Jessica.
I was just noticing, I think it's D, doesn't really have specifically to do with the BEP and maybe should still stay in there.
Okay.
In that it's really about voice of parents and staff and students. And I think it's probably still a good idea.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I really want to, and I apologize, I didn't see this in previous iterations, but we need to do some serious amending on item C. While disruptions to the classrooms need to be addressed and there needs to be consideration of safety for all people in that environment, this is some very deficit and biased language in this one, and I do not feel comfortable advancing on this language, just because sometimes as someone who's had to evacuate a classroom because there was a student, sometimes that is the safest option, and that can't be, you don't want to get into a wrestling match with a kid in front of all the students, or if seclusion and restraints are needed due to a child's needs or what needs to happen. I just really do not like the language on C. So either we strike it or we just don't advance it. But C needs to go or needs to change.
I concur.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, I would move to strike C and E.
Okay.
Agree.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that, go ahead, Ruben, or sorry, Andre.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, having been a part of multiple groups and committees and work groups that have over the years had sought input from community members around the BEP, including most recently a couple of years ago, the guiding principles one that went line by line through the BEP and made suggested changes to it. That I think some of these are very specific, but it sounds like more input and feedback from other stakeholders and, including teachers and all of that in the evaluation process of any changes around the BEP. It's like you said, a very complicated and long document that could probably sit here for hours and talk about when it was launched, whether there was appropriate and level of resources and training. And, I happened to be in a committee that heard it before a lot of the staff did over the summer months, and they walked back into a big major change. So I don't know, getting specifically into all of those is good now, but I think something very general about including other stakeholders' voice in the evaluation and plan that's ongoing right now to examine and make changes to the BEP would maybe suffice at getting at least additional input into that and recognizing there's likely necessary changes, and you'd want to have those stakeholders represented in the process where those changes would be brought up more specifically with a sufficient time to work those out.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So what I'm hearing is make sure that all staff and students are familiar with the BEP and use appropriate response levels for behaviors. Also include a BEP, and well, I think that will probably be something separate maybe, but maybe, okay. Make sure that all staff and students are familiar with the behavior education plan and use appropriate response levels for behaviors A, D. We're striking out C and D because I'm going to put that somewhere else, and E. So it will be for A, B, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L. And then if BEP analysis and evaluations of changes of the BEP ensure that all stakeholder voices in the process of changes are included. So it's addressing the fact that making sure that the appropriate response and levels of behaviors are known by staff and families and students, but then also if there are any changes or evaluations of the BEP that we're including all stakeholder voices in the process. Does that sound good to folks?
Which were you including? Which letters were you including, I guess, as a part of that?
A, B, F, G, H, J, or I, J, K, and L. So I striked out C. I striked out D because I added that at the end to ensure the opinion, like ensuring the stakeholder voice, and then striked out E.
I guess from my perspective, I see this as two or multiple things. There's like educating around the BP and maybe incorporate into that having more voice from other stakeholders in the process of reviewing and making changes. Some of these then seem to be contrary to that to me, or completely separate, like or maybe not completely separate, but maybe not always included. And so I guess I don't know that I would go into all the specifics. I would leave it as more of the general one to go forward, because like either change the plan or add more safety measures to make sure, like, well, if there's a group that's looking at that with the stakeholders, I don't know why you would include that in there.
How are folks feeling about making it just more general about the education piece? And then if there are any changes that we ensure that voices are being heard and something in that realm, opposed to adding A through L. Go ahead, Lavinia.
I guess I just have a really quick clarifying question. Because we are like recommending kind of a general statement and like the specific proposals that committee members sent in may or may not like happen. Would that be something that the panel kind of like follows up on, so we can make sure that like these specific proposals are also happening, but like not recommended from the start. That was kind of confusing, but if that
I
makes
understand
sense.
what you're saying. You're basically saying that we can recommend something general, however, ask that the panel kind of review these items, although they haven't necessarily been recommended, but because they are part of the work that we were doing, that they could possibly also ensure that some of this comes up. I mean, yeah.
Yes.
I would think so. I mean, really, essentially, the things that we're recommending, the board will then take up. So, and then the panel would also, well, no, I'm not saying everything will be taken up, but then the panel could also work on. I think as a board member, when you get into more very specific things, I can tell you the conversation will go on for hours. And so, I mean, I personally like the language of something more general. And if there are any changes that we include like all stakeholder voices in the process of the changes, that way it kind of says like, regardless of what each item is, if there is something that comes up that is super important, that we can ensure that that gets part of the process. So.
Yeah, that works. I
Okay.
was just kind of wondering about like what happens if, but we can think about that later.
No, it's okay. So what I'm hearing is that, and I saw some nods on the screen, that folks are okay with just having a general statement about the BEP and not the specific points from A through L. Okay. I see Michelle's thumbs up. I see some kind of nodding heads. Time check is at 7:18. Okay, so I'm gonna just rephrase this again. So that the recommendation, so I recommend that let me get back to my screen. I'm sorry, guys, I'm fading now. I recommend that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education to make sure that all staff and students are familiar with the behavioral education plan and use the appropriate response levels for behaviors. If the BEP, so behavioral education plan, is analyzed and or evaluated for changes, that includes all stakeholder voices in the process of those changes. And I think Mike was the one that seconded for me, so I'm just asking if you're okay with that language.
I am okay with that language.
Thanks, Mike. So then all those in favor of this recommendation, please raise your hand. Okay. Those opposed? Okay. Dr. Hicks, are you abstaining? Go ahead.
I know that she's in a,
She's right here.
okay.
You're muted, Dr. Hicks.
Oh, no, I'm okay. I'm in the background taking care of something personally. So
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so now I know that, so I won't ask. Okay, so there's no abstentions or opposes. Dr. Hicks just right now is unable to participate in the vote though. Barb. Okay.
I think she did.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that passes. Whew. Okay, so I propose that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education to better the following to better support the following: provide better and more transparent communication to staff and parents whenever safety issues cause a hold, lockdown, etc. In other words, notify faculty of the issue, even if it's vague, and how to keep students calm and safe. Brief staff on important details prior to scholars and parents to ensure rumors and misinformation from spreading before official MMSD communications comes out. Staff absolutely should be made aware of the presence of a weapon or other physical threat immediately in real time via a call to the classroom or an all staff email. Ask principals to notify students and parents through emails, newsletters, and announcements about a family-oriented documents explaining the process of the critical response. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who was that?
That was Ruben.
Okay, Ruben. Ruben seconded it. Any discussion on this item? Okay, looks like none. So I will go ahead and ask for all those in favor of this item. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, any opposed to this item? Nichelle, I don't, are you opposed or abstaining?
I'm sorry, I was having some computer issues. I am in favor.
Okay, got it. And then any opposed? None, okay. Okay, any abstaining? Okay, so it's unanimous. Thanks, Barb.
Yep.
And then it is proposed that the Safety Wellness Ad Hoc Committee recommend to the Board of Education the following: to do procedures about, or to do presentations about safety protocols at the beginning of the year, to include the objective of the Office of School Safety and what their role is in providing school safety. Second, anyone? Okay, Andre seconded. Okay, I saw Andre's hand. Okay, any discussion on this item?
Yeah, can I ask, does this not happen? And is this like asking for an assembly? I'm just kind of trying to figure out what we're actually asking for.
I believe this is one of those things that are like,
It's supposed to happen, but doesn't happen.
it is open for, yes.
Okay.
Because I do know my kids did a safety protocol at the beginning of the school year at Wright. But from my understanding, I don't know if it happens at every school
Okay, thank you.
in a way that is this way, so. Okay, any other discussion about that? Okay, all those in favor for this, please raise your hand. Okay. Got it. Okay, it looks like any opposed? Okay, see none opposed. Then that was a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Okay, time check, guys. We are 7:25. We have student mental health left, and we have training left. Yes, Mike, go ahead, in the show. Or go ahead, Mike.
I'm gonna move to for this group to adjourn and to tackle those two issues next either the 16th or the 23rd. So that's my motion.
Okay. Nichelle, are you seconding the motion? Andre,
Well, my hand was raised prior to the motion, but I will certainly second it because I was going to tell you that I have another meeting and I'm going to need to leave in like 2 minutes.
okay. So Andre is seconding it.
Quick question. I'm not opposed to that, and I can certainly second it. I remember there were some timelines of when the board was meeting and when these needed to come out. So, and we don't have another meeting scheduled, so I would assume we would schedule it prior to whenever we needed to get whatever to the board.
Yes, the board we will be, thank you, Barb, for bringing up this calendar. We are going to be presenting this at the regular board meeting, which is in March. Is it the regular or the
operations work group?
operations? Sorry. So
Sorry, I
that
didn't mean to push you to that calendar.
no, it's okay.
So I will second.
Okay. So we have enough time is what I'm saying. Okay, so Andre seconded. All those in favor of moving to another meeting, possibly next week or the week after. Okay.
Could you please pick a date though?
Yes.
We should do something.
Next week, Thursday is the 16th. And then the week after that is the 23rd.
I'm good for either day.
Okay. So I guess can folks like put their thumbs up if they want the next Thursday, the 16th, if that it's a good time. Okay, so it looks like for a majority of folks that choose maybe the 23rd want to put their thumbs up. Okay, so it looks like the majority is the 16th, Barb.
Andre cannot.
I can attend the 16th, but not the 23rd.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. So 16th is the date?
It looks like the majority of
Thursday.
voting folks can be there
Thank
on
you.
next Thursday.
Okay,
Okay.
I guess you'll need to take a vote on that.
Okay. All those in favor of meeting next on February 16th to finalize this plan, hopefully. Okay. It looks like any opposed to that? Okay, none opposed. Everyone's unanimous. Okay, I'll see you guys on the 16th. Is there an adjournment?
He made adjournment part of that motion.
He did? Oh,
He
okay.
did.
So we're good. Okay, everyone have a good night. Bye.
Thanks, Maya. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Thanks,
everyone.
Lavinia.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, one moment. I'll be right with you.